right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Man That Can Project podcast. I'm your host, Lockie Stewart, and today's guest, we've got Jayden Woolaston. Now, Jayden is the founder and host of Couching the Mind, which is a podcast series that allows individuals to openly express on the couch past and present struggles that have ultimately shaped them into the person that they are today. So Jay's going to join me in conversation. It's hard to put into words. Like everyone always says, like they give you tips and advice and really just say, make sure you make the most of it and stuff or enjoy it. But like, you know, I was expecting it to be great, but it's just like everyone's so happy. They're celebrating you. So it's like this perfect.
I bet you it would have been so stressful leading up to it because of COVID, making sure that nothing was going to be dragged out to the unknown. But I guess it was so lucky that you found the right time and everything went smooth sail.
Mate, I was literally having a coffee with a mate on the Tuesday, so a week before we left, and that's when they're...
Yeah.
It was before the NRL Grand Final, so the week before the NRL, and I was like, these fuckers lock us down. I'll be so furious. I'm like, they can't let the footy go ahead. And then on the Thursday, I had coffee with that same mate, and he was like, mate, you'll be fine, it'll be fine. And I was like, yeah, but if it's not... I was so focused on that. I don't feel like I've been that stressed for such a long time because I think I'd also switched off to just be ready for the wedding and for a holiday as well. So to have that potential, and you know, everyone's been experiencing this for the last 2 years, but to have that potential taken away, I was like, nah, not today. But anyway, it went off like a fucking firecracker.
Bro, I don't blame you though, because it's one of those things where like if one thing doesn't work out, then the whole process of what you were trying to do, what you're trying to do, getting married and then going on your little honeymoon, all that sort of stuff. It ruins the whole order. But, mate, everything went smooth, so that's great to hear, man.
Yeah, mate, it was dreamy. But how have you been, mate?
Yeah, been good, man. Actually, I was doing a bit of electrical and I've stopped doing that for a while, since probably about seven months ago now, just because I've gone through my ACL reconstruction, which is my second one, which is hopefully not 3 times lucky, which is a bit of a fuckery. But I've just been working for the government at the moment. I'm actually taking the COVID calls.
How is it? Would it take us through that process?
Yeah, so coming from the perspective of someone behind the computer screen, hearing all the complaints and trying to deal with it, it's a bit of a roller coaster with emotions because it's hard to not get invested with people's situations because there's a lot of people. Surprisingly, at the moment, it's suicide and mental health is a massive thing. Yeah, right. I've had plenty of suicide calls. I won't go into details, but it's a difficult time, and I think from our perspective, all we can kind of see it to get through it is we can do only what we can, and everything else that can happen is out of our control, and I think that's the way I go about it. The way I go out, leave work, and when I leave work, I leave all the problems at work and get on with life, and that's how I kind of do it. But
how do you manage to do that though? Because everyone probably wants to do that, but there's also a large chunk of society that takes their shit home with them.
I think the best way to do it, not just specifically with my scenario, but anything in general, if you're struggling with something or if it is in the instance of going through something at work, I think the best thing to go through and cope with it is to talk about it. Number one, talk about it, acknowledge that you may be struggling with something or something's on your mind and you don't know how to get rid of it. And through that you might be able to pick up some more coping mechanisms, and then from there I guess you've got to hit a point where you're like, you've done all you can, you've got to move on, and you've got to just continue walking forward. And that's the way I sort of look at it. Whereas in the past, I wouldn't talk about things, and I'd let things bog me down. And then from there, I'd be a mess. And then you hit a point where you don't know what to do with yourself, and you're not really at one with your emotions. And that's sort of how I kind of approach it.
What was the moment for you that made you go, fuck it, I'm going to start talking about things?
Yeah, it's a good question, man, because, when I was growing up, when I was a lot younger, not that we never spoke about our emotions and feelings, but I just didn't really have an understanding of how to do that. I felt that when my mates were struggling or if anything was happening in my family, that me openly talking about my emotions and how I was feeling negatively and all that sort of stuff would make the situation worse than what it was. It'd bring a burden to the situation. Right. So I hit a point where what happened? I hit a point where like I couldn't handle my emotions and the way I would react when I'd put in stressful situations. For example, is I would act out and I wouldn't hit anyone, but I would punch things out of frustration. So like if, say for example, I'm driving to the car and I'm meant to get somewhere, I'm meant to get to an appointment, and there's 20 minutes, I've got 20 minutes on the clock and I'm stuck in peak hour traffic. I would get that stressed that I'd punch the steering wheel out of frustration because like I didn't know how to control it, man, and it would be a continual cycle, on and on and on. And then I just reached a point where I'm like, man, I can't be like this. I want to be the best version of myself. And even me doing that, I remember when I was with my ex, even me doing that, it would make her feel uncomfortable. And I took an oath to myself that I wanted to become the best person I can.
Yep.
And to be able to do that, I've got to put my hand up and go, I need to get rid of these things that I do because it's not bringing out the best of me.
Yep. It's interesting when you think about, or you put it into perspective there, where it made your partner feel uncomfortable when you do stuff like that. I think it's something that we need to, we're just talking about, I guess, self-awareness, like maybe things that we say, how we act does have a ripple effect on for those who are in a relationship. It does have that ripple effect, and if we want to have a trusted, loving, caring relationship, we need to be mindful of how we can I guess, respond to the stimulus around us or the world around us and not react and lash out with aggression and stuff like that, because it can make your partner feel unsafe. And even if we go, it's not directed towards you, it's the fucking this, that and the other, they still see that side of you where they're like, well, could that be me one day? Like, and you don't want them to feel like that,
And that's the thing, man. And one of the things I've learned over time is, what happened was I ended up going to like a men's talking group. It was called YFS.
Yep.
And that was when I had that breaking point where I'm like, I really need to change the way I'm reacting to certain situations because I'm not happy with it. And from that learning curve, I learned that it doesn't matter what age, demographic, background you come from. There's a lot of things as blokes that we pick up on that we really don't have an understanding.
Yep.
Finding that relatability with that is the key for me to be able to heal and to get better and to move on going forward. And talking about just doing exactly what I was saying in that example of punching the steering wheel. Violence, when we think of violence as guys, I don't know about you, Lockie, but when you think of violence, like the number one thing I think of is physical, straight away.
Yep.
You hear like violence against women, physical. But there's so many different types of violence. There's physical, and then there's verbal, and there's you could even be like gaslighting. Like that's a form of violence because you're manipulating them and making them believe that what they thought originally was never the truth.
Yep.
So upon learning and upon going through that process, I've learned over time that there's so many different forms of violence, and that when we do go through something, we aren't there going through it by ourselves.
That's so well said, and it's cool that you touched on gaslighting as well, because it's definitely something that, I've done that before, and I wasn't even aware of it at the time. Same with emotional abuse or emotional violence. Like, I was lashing out from my own insecurities, or maybe when I was experiencing jealousy, and I was like, there's that saying, hurt people. So I was like, I want her to know how I feel by making her feel exactly how I'm feeling right now.
That's it, yeah.
And it just makes things worse. But it is, what kind of person wants to be in a relationship with that's how you're made feel by someone who's supposed to love you. But yeah, as you sort of touch on, there's a lot of us who aren't aware of it. But how do you come across like YFS, the talking group?
Yeah, YFS. So pretty much the way in which I got into that was, obviously, I said I was going through that patch where I wasn't really happy with the way I was reacting in certain ways, and it wasn't bringing out the best version of myself. Yep. So my father actually went to the group YFS.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so he actually found the group himself, and he found it very beneficial. So there was certain things, certain patterns, I was kind of certain traits that I was holding on to that my father had in the past, and he just knew that like I needed to do something to better myself, and I needed to be the bigger man to do that. So I went to this group, and it was in Logan, YFS. Interesting enough, there was a lot of people in there that were ordered by the court. So very different group coming from a background where like I've only ever seen a counsellor. I've been to Headspace a few times. I've never been able to talk about my emotions openly and freely to a bunch of blokes. So I've gone to this group, and a lot of them have been, again, ordered by the court. They were drug addicts, alcoholics, guys that just came out of prison.
Yep.
So, and first off, I used to have this perception of people, like with the whole don't judge a book by its cover thing, where like I'd look at someone and go, oh shit, like what am I in for here? There were some interesting looking characters in that group, but absolutely like best guys. Like, some of them have done wrong, but they're awesome guys. They just don't know how to handle their emotions in certain situations. And it was a process of learning that. And then you get to the 15-week mark, and then you openly talk about where were you first week, where were you the halfway point to where you are now. Like, what can you see the change in you? And it's awesome. Like, I haven't seen anyone who's coming out of the group and has not changed for the better.
That's so fucking cool, man. I know
it's awesome, man.
Being a part of men's groups as well, just the power that community has, and also everyone being able to see each other raw. Like, I think there's people with fixed mindsets, and they don't believe that anything can change or people can't change, and then there's obviously people who know they can change and accept that people can change, and I think everyone deserves a second chance, third chance, as long as they're having a crack. Like, we can all make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. I still make mistakes. I'm sure you still make mistakes.
Yeah.
But they don't define who we are. They show that we're having a crack. And if we are willing to learn from those mistakes, then why not give someone a second chance? If we're not willing to learn from it, then, well, that's a different story. But there's so many inspirational people that I think have even written books, or people listen to on podcasts, that have overcome some of the most incredible adversity. And they inspire more people than I ever will. But when they were going through their shit, maybe coming out of prison or whatever, everyone would have had, they might have had a stigma around that person, or a perceived idea around that person. But for yourself, then, I know you were electrocuted. I remember when I was on your podcast, and you were talking about being electrocuted.
Yep.
Talk me through that.
Yeah. 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 So that was probably about 3 years ago, man. So I was first year electrical apprentice at the time. And I was working in this factory, I won't say the name, but it was like an industrial factory where they were making cornice and gyprock manufacturing company.
Yep.
So I was just working on an isolating switch, and I was pretty green to the idea of testing the switches and making sure everything was dead, all that sort of stuff. And I was working with a 24-year-old Sparky at the time. And we're going through that process and testing away, and everything seemed to be going well, and he was happy with the progress, and he thought it was dead. He went off to training, and I was kind of left to my own demise. So what happened was I was just pulling apart this isolating switch, and I don't know if you ever go up like an escalator, and you get that like static on the side.
Yeah.
Like I always used to do it as a kid. I'd always like try to see how close I can get my hand to the rail before I get that static shock. But it kind of felt like that, man. I felt that on the back of my hand, and I was going, that's a bit strange. I've tested it, and obviously, being the dick I was, and the potato I was, I didn't test correctly. And long story short, the fuses that were pulled were the incorrect fuses. So the control wire was still live, and those fuses were still in. And I just got this shock. I remember I got the shock. It was just on the palm of my hand, just there.
Yep.
And basically, what they say in electrical terms is when electricity hits you on the palm, your instant reaction is to clench the fist. So my fist just clenched up like there was no tomorrow, and muscles contracting, everything. And it was a weird process, because I really didn't have any time to analyze the situation. Like I remember I managed to let out a gasp of help, and then after that, I couldn't. Like my throat was closing up, like it's like muscles contracting everywhere, so everything was closing up. Sort of felt like I was floating a little bit. And I don't know if you ever you lie down on the couch after a big day of work watching Netflix, and your hands like hanging on the side of the couch, and you get that real tingling feeling because it's going full numb. Oh, exactly, man. It felt exactly like that, but it was just rushing around my body like at a force I've never experienced before. It was the weirdest experience ever. But I remember sitting there, man, and I was on this orange safety step. And unfortunately enough, I was on this step purely because I did my ACL. I ruptured my ACL about 2 or 3 months prior. So I'm sitting on this orange safety step on this corner, and I'm just thinking to myself, how the fuck am I getting off this? Because I can't call for help. And if I call for help, I got water around me too. So, and the guy that was closest to me was in the lunchroom, and he was in his 60s. So if he comes over and he grabs me, he's going to get stuck on, and he's definitely going to die. Like I have no word of a lie. I think if anything happened, so I'm like, fuck, I'm really fucked here. And then what hit me, Lockie, was, man, I had this fight or flight moment. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or experienced it yourself, Lockie, but basically it's like a last gasp. So you start thinking of your family, friends. So I was thinking of my partner at the time, my family, friends. I'm like, nah, fuck this. I can get out of this. Surely there's a way. And like, I don't know how, because like when you're stuck on, you're paralyzed. So I don't know how I moved, but I somehow managed to move off the edge of this orange safety step, flung back, hit the ground, and then I was back to reality again. And as a result, I've got exit wounds in both palms of my hand, one on my back, and then one on my leg that I found out when I got home after the hospital visit, because I had car keys in my pocket and a melted hole in my leg.
What?
So that was a funny experience, because I got to the hospital and they're doing the full ECG.
Yeah.
And they're like, yep. So going through the pattern of where the current would have gone through. So they would have gone from right palm to left palm, as you can see from the exit wounds. And I said to them, "Do you want to check my legs?" And they're like, "No, everything will be fine." Get home, and I got no word of a lie, probably a hole that big on the inside of my leg, because the car keys had ultimately melted a hole.
Mental.
Yeah.
Right, so talk us through how, because for me that sounded like a lifetime of electrocution with how you said that. But how long do you reckon you were getting zapped for? Was it like...
Oh, yeah, it's a good question, man. It's hard, because I think whenever we go through a tragic experience, it feels like it's going on for hours.
Yep.
Like it feels like it was hours, like, because the adrenaline was rushing, adrenaline's rushing, so it feels like it's going on forever and ever. I reckon I'll probably be stuck on for only like 7 or 8 seconds. But, another 7 or 8 seconds it might... But another 7 or 8 seconds, my internals would have probably started to cook, so... It worked out well, man.
Is there any long-term effect from it? Like, did you get any heart palpitations or anything like that?
Look, with the heart, I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, especially getting the Moderna COVID vaccine.
Yep.
I was like, fuck. Hopefully, it doesn't play out with the heart. But honestly, man, apart from that, I'm very lucky that I haven't had any long-term effects apart from scarring.
Yep.
Mate, even my headspace doesn't bother me anymore. I can talk about it as much as I'd like, and it doesn't, like, bringing myself back to that situation, it doesn't affect me at all.
What would you do differently, like if you could go back before then?
So here's a funny response, man. I honestly wouldn't do anything differently, because I'm actually really glad that I went through that scenario. And it's funny because, it's a life near-death experience, and I've got the scarring to show and all that sort of stuff.
Chicks dig
But,
scars.
mate, yeah. Well, I'm still trying to find the right girl, mate. Just
Still searching.
yeah, still soul searching. But I'm glad I went through that experience, because, and I don't know if you've experienced it yourself, man, but when we do go through tragic experiences, when we do go through that experience, we only focus on the negatives rather than the positives and what we can actually take out of it. And for me, I gained so much self-growth, and it woke me up, and I just realised that I wanted to live the best version of myself and, the best life possible, because we only live once, man. And that's when I woke up and I'm like, you know what? I don't give a fuck what other people think, but I'm just gonna continue on that process and see what I can get out of it.
it's there that having your life flash before your eyes, you realize your mortality. Like, especially as blokes, I know for myself, I grew up and still have moments where you think you're bulletproof, like you're invincible. And then you have, I crashed a car like 12 years ago now, and I flipped the fucking thing like through this fence and a tree. And that was the moment that you're like, yeah, my life is actually pretty precious. And then you speak to, I love speaking to older people, and I love listening and learning about their life and what they would do differently. But you also see, unfortunately, we've had all of us experience loss or death at some point, and it's like, well, okay, how am I going to maximize my life, and what do I really want from it? Because most people are just passengers. They're just letting life go by, and hopefully they get some satisfaction, some cool moments out of life. Whereas, and especially in today's world with technology and stuff, we can make so much cool stuff happen. We have that ability. We just got to be proactive with it, be intentional with our time, what skills we learn, who we hang around, and it can change the whole fucking quality of life.
That's the thing, man. Like you said, the way I look at it is there's so many people that are watching a walkthrough. So you're watching a walkthrough of other people's lives, and you're envious of what they've been able to achieve, rather than kind of just walking on your own path and looking at it and going, fuck, what do I actually want? Rather than looking at other people and doing what other people want you to do just for pure pleasure and getting acknowledgement from doing that. And it's a really hard one because, you look at like social media, people follow certain trends and you want to look like a certain athlete because fuck, they've got heaps of followers, or they get heaps of girls because their physique is fucking awesome. But realistically, man, is that going to make you happy? You've really got to ask yourself that.
Exactly. And I think a lot of us don't ever do that because we're either getting ready to get ready, we're looking for that perfect thing that we think is going to change our life, we're trying to hit a home run off every decision, not fucking possible, or we just live in fear. And both of them aren't going to get you to, like, action has to happen in order for you to gain an outcome, and the outcome might not always be positive, but through having a negative experience even, you're going to get enough feedback to go, okay, well, what can I do differently? How can I improve those things? For yourself, though, there are a lot of people out there who have a traumatic experience and they use that as like their victim blanket. It's the reason why they can't be, do, or have whatever they want. It's like, no, this happened to me, or this is why I can't do that. And it's like, that happened, but it also doesn't define you. What made you not take that route, do you think?
All right, so I'll kind of dumb it down a little bit. So after that experience, oh, bro, I'm not like qualified in any fields or anything, but I'll keep it simplistic for the listeners. Not long after that experience, I was in that 5-year relationship, and that kind of ended, and it was like just a never-ending domino effect of all this negative scenarios being thrown at me, and I'm going, what the fuck? And then I just thought to myself in terms of what you're saying. So basically, I've got a tattoo on my bicep, this one here,
FFF,
and FFF, and basically what that means to me is, so the first F is like past tense. You have to forgive yourself, forgive the situation that you may have gone through, or forgive a person that has done something negative to you. And then present tense is you forgave yourself, you gave the situation, you forgave that person. And then the third F, as a summary, all is forgotten. So the way I read that is, say for example, like you're in a relationship and someone may have, there was a bit of mistrust and someone's cheated on you. 6 months down the track, you meet someone new. It's not fair on them to give, to have trust issues with them because they haven't put you in a scenario where you felt that way. You know what I mean? Like, what's happened in the past is meant to be left in the past. Yep. And you talk about it, you acknowledge it, and you move forward. And I think that's the best way. I guess that's the way I look at it. Like, if I go through something tragic, I'll just acknowledge it, talk about it, but I won't push it on other people. And you see some people, for example, that may have grown up, and their father was an alcoholic, and they use that blanket excuse of, because my father was an alcoholic, I'm control of what I do, but I'm probably going to be an alcoholic as well. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it could be a genetic thing, but you can actually stop that process and you can do something about it by acknowledging it, by putting your head up and saying, you know what, alcohol doesn't agree with me. and then stopping that process and becoming the better version of yourself.
Yeah, there's sacrifice involved. I look at, as you were saying then, I was literally thinking about that idea this morning for whatever reason. I was like, it's carrying baggage is like, you know, you get organic food and how quickly organic food goes rotten is like 2 days and it's fucking off. And it's
Exactly.
like you buy food on a Monday and you're going out to dinner all the time, and whatever you don't eat, you take to the next place, and eventually it's going to be moldy and stinky and rotten. But you're like, oh, it's still, I paid for it. I've had that experience. I might as well take it with me. And everyone starts going, if you rock up at my house with your fucking moldy bread and stinky cheese or whatever it is, piss off. And that's what most of us are doing with a lot of the baggage that we carry. It's like, it was an experience, learn from it, but every experience is new. There are some things that we can be mindful of, have conversations around, but it's not the exact same experience. The new partner is not the same as the old partner. You're not the same person you were, hopefully you're not the same person you were 6 months ago. We should be, continually looking to improve who we are as individuals to be able to add more value to those that come into our life.
No, it's spot on, man. Like you always want to improve. It's like, if I use it in like fitness terms, you look at yourself and you might go, 6 to 7 months down the track, I want to improve my physique, or I want to lose weight. And then when you get to that target, you always see something that you're not happy with. There's always an imperfection.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like we're never happy with what we've got. And sometimes, because like it's like when you set a goal, it's like attainable, but it's at the same time it's not obtainable, because you're setting all these small minuscule goals to achieve. But what is your ultimate goal? Like in terms of fitness, I don't know. Like I want to put weight on, but once I get to that weight, then I want to probably put more weight on, and it's a continual sort of thing. So you got to get to a point where you're like, I'm happy with what I've been able to achieve, and you just go from there.
It's being content with the desire for more is. I struggle to articulate what I think, because I think it's so important, as you were saying, like you want to be happy with where you're at, and I'm so stoked with where I am, because if you see, if you reflect maybe over 6 months or 6 years on your own growth as a man or as a person, it's pretty exciting. It's very empowering and inspiring.
Absolutely.
And I also know that I want to continue the growth, because who I am right now isn't going to be the man that I need to be to continue hitting my, the other things that I want from my life. There's so much that I have to work on, and rather than just viewing myself as incompetent or a piece of shit, which I used to, it's like, well, I love who I am, but I can, there's work to be done as well, and I'm going to enjoy that process. It's not there's no destination. It's just, like you said, once you hit that one, you're probably going to be looking for the next thing, because that's what most people who are pursuing better or have a growth mindset, they look for, because it's you don't stop.
That's the thing, man. Like, we all have like an idea of where we want to head, but we've got to understand that shit's going to happen along the way. Hurdles going to be thrown at us, and we might veer off the track a little bit and end up doing something else that we enjoy doing. Like, the idea of becoming like a doctor in 5 years' time, you might end up becoming a physio, because all these things come thrown at you, and that's a part of life. You can't. I feel like as if you can't have set goals. You can have an idea of where you're tracking and where you're heading, but stuff's going to happen along the way. Things are going to change, and you've just got to be accustomed to change.
Yeah, behavioural flexibility. It's the way to look at it, and it's exactly. I think I was talking about it yesterday. At some point, like, I used to get so focused on destinational goals, like set goals, as you're talking about. And I think there is, like, in the short term, like there's some stuff, whether it's over a 12-week period, it can be nice to achieve stuff like that. But big picture, I look more broadly around, like, okay, well, what are some things that I can work towards having in my life that no matter what's going on, what I decide to be doing, because I know I'm going to grow and evolve and change, and I'll be curious about doing other things, that if I have these things, it's going to allow me to explore that. And for me, it was having good people around myself. It was having choice, and choice to me means having enough money to do that, but also having flexibility, hence why I work for myself and am in control of my income and am in control of my hours. It's being happy, which is why I am really intentional with who I spend my time around, and I invest in myself, but I also have adventures and have fun, because I think no matter what I'm pursuing, whether I'm a dad, whether I'm a business owner, whether who even knows what what my life's going to look like in 20 years, those core things that I speak about will then allow me to pursue whatever those set goals are at that point in time.
Yeah, because we all set like what we deem to be valuable for ourselves is what we work on, and it's something you've just touched base on that I have had to change over time is the idea of like my friendship group. You know, when I was a bit younger, it was all about I want to make sure I know as many people as possible so I can go to X party, I can do this, I can do that, and you know my popularity just grows over time. But what I've realised is that realistically, your closest mates, you know, you only need enough to fit on the palm of your hand. You know, enough to be able to sit down, just go to a pub, like 5 or 6 guys, and just chat to them and go, look, I'm struggling, this is what I'm going through, and they don't think second of it, they'll talk about it, they'll, you know, help you get through that process, and they can do the same thing as well. And that's what I've learned.
It's a beautiful experience. Like, I 100% with you. It's like growing up, you want everyone to know you and to be the coolest, the most popular dude, because you think that, you know, that is everything that we're striving for. But us blokes are difficult. Like, it's hard to stay in contact. As you said, with 5 mates on the palm of your hand, it's hard to call everyone. With life being busy, obviously it's all down to priorities, but you know, not everyone's schedules sync up. So I might try and call a mate and he's busy doing work, so then we have to try and find another time to chat. So trying to do that with 1 million people, or even 20 people, is hard work, man. And it's hard to build that connection or get all the boys together. So I think it's important to just, from my experience as well, is like just dial in those couple of really close mates that know have your back. You can have a bit of a laugh with you. You share good experiences, but are also there when you need to have conversations that could change your life. I suppose every conversation has the ability to do that. But go back to your relationship, which ended 5 years ago. What happened there? Like, talk us through that.
Well, I've actually never, to be honest, man, this is probably the first time I've ever actually spoken about it on a podcast. But just because I've always tried, because I've always liked to, I guess I sort of protected my ex. But now that I've kind of parted ways and she's doing her thing, I'll just spill the beans. So no, basically what happened, man. I'll just go to cut to the chase. Long story short, she ended up cheating on me.
Yep. And
that just it just threw a spanner in the works. I didn't see that coming, and that was the whole process. It was like, what happened was ACL. Electric shock. I actually also saw my ex's dog get eaten by a pit bull in the backyard a couple months later.
What?
Which was, yeah, man. I was giving a hug at her house, and then she let out a big gasp, and I'm going, is there a fucking spider on the wall or something? And I look in the backyard, and this pit bull was just, was eating her chihuahua, and it was just. Yeah, it was a hectic experience from going from all those experiences. Then after that, got cheated. Well, then I was cheated on, and I was just like, "What the fuck? Like, when's this gonna end?" And I blame myself. I blame myself all the time, man. Like, I never did anything for myself. I could have been a better person, maybe, in terms of how I dealt with my stress and all those sort of things. But I didn't see it coming, and I hit my lowest point. I felt pretty depressed, I'm going to be honest. Felt pretty depressed, and I had a lacking of identity, because when you're with someone for so long, and having it was a school relationship as well. So I never had time for myself, and I never really found out who I was as a person. And half of me was with my ex-partner. Yep. That's what happens. But now that I'm by myself, I've found out who I am and what I want. And all I really want to do, man, is just try to make a world of difference in the world that we live in, and try and spread the the message of just talking when you're struggling.
How did it make you feel though when you first found out that you'd been cheated on? Like, how did that make you feel?
Man, look, I thought I was dreaming. I honestly thought like this is not real. I'm gonna wake up
A dream or a nightmare, bro?
yeah, bro. It's definitely not a fucking dream. Definitely not a dream. It was a nightmare for sure. That was just never ending. And I was just hoping that I'd wake up from this nightmare and I'd wake up and I'd be getting ready for work and continuing that process. But it was reality and it hit me really hard. I honestly did not know what to do. I didn't talk to anyone about it for ages because I didn't want, people to look down at her, and I didn't want people to understand what I was going through. So I held on to it for a very long time, and fortunately it happened again after trying to heal. Yeah. I was trying to heal. I was trying to get through it with her, and
did you
it
have
happened
any
again.
Conversations around that, like how? So talk us through that because it's so common, right? Like the statistics show that like relationship breakdown is one of the leading factors why men take their life by suicide. And as you touched on, when we aren't certain in ourselves, or we don't understand who we are as men, part of our identity can be with that other person, right? And that's why, and it works both ways, don't get me wrong, like I've been cheated on and I've also cheated on ex-partners. And I've seen how they've tried to heal the relationship even when I was in the wrong and vice versa. And I guess for you, like what was that process like where you were like, okay, why first and foremost were you choosing to give it another crack after someone had cheated on you and made you feel
good question, man. So the way I kind of look at everything I go through is I want to know the reasoning. I want to know why is this happening? Why? Yeah, exactly why. So I went through that, and she was kind of saying that maybe the stress load I was putting her under because of the way I was reacting. And I said, look, you know what? I'm gonna put my hand up, and I'm doing this for yourself, and I'm doing this for me as well. And that's why I went to the men's talking group to better myself, to find out why I was reacting in certain ways. But then it happened again, and I realized that like I can't keep doing this, and I've got to focus on myself and fix myself to not be able to react in certain ways. But it's true, man. It's a very common thing, and I know not a lot of people don't really talk about it because as guys we don't really talk about this sort of shit. And I hit points where like I thought like it'd probably be easier if I just ended myself and just took myself out of this world, because I wouldn't have to talk about it. I wouldn't have to let anyone know. But the moment I spoke about it, I was like, thank fuck, it's off my chest.
Well, glad you're still here and glad you started speaking.
Thanks, man.
It's definitely like because I'd built myself into this athlete, and I thought athletes have everything. They don't have problems. They have money. They have women. And when I got cheated on, I was like, why the fuck would you cheat on me? Like I was insecure as fuck, but I thought I'd done everything to be so desirable. And then to be able to talk about it was so hard to talk about it. Like everyone knew what had happened, but we didn't speak about it because I would get aggressive and retaliate, or if some bloke brought it up. But I really needed to be able to talk about it because I just needed to go, this is what I'm experiencing. I feel fucking heartbroken. I feel unworthy, and I was confused. And a lot of us, because we don't get to, we don't even understand what those emotions are, but we don't ever get to talk about it. It's like, well, I need to find out why. And sometimes you can't, like, the why is just like, it's just an event that happened, and it's not always personal. Yeah, maybe the love and connection wasn't there, but it's not a reflection on who you are as a person. Like, a lot of blokes who are going through relationship breakdowns and stuff, it's like, you're all still fucking great people. We might have things that we need to improve on, and like I said, we all have shit to improve on, whether our life's going good or not. So the goal is to be better, and obviously we can get feedback from relationship breakdown, job losses, fallouts with mates, whatever it is, on how we can be better. We might not be able to repair and fix what was, but moving forward we can elevate ourselves and continue to grow, which is where I'd love to see more people feel comfortable. It's like, yeah, it fucking hurts, and it's going to hurt. That's completely fine. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, thanks, man. Because, like, in line of what you're saying, when you see other blokes going through a situation, they may not react the right way, or whatever it may be, excessive drug usage, whatever it is. as you said, we're all good guys, but we just don't know how to handle our emotions and feelings, and as a result, we're now addicted to something that's excusing the fact of being able to openly talk about stuff. And I guess the story that is in line with that is, one night I was walking out toward Eagle Street, and I was having a few drinks with some mates, and I was on my way to Fridays, and I saw this
Fridays.
Good old Fridays, mate. Still alive and kicking. I don't know how, but yep.
I haven't been there for probably 10 years.
Oh mate, I went there a couple of weekends ago. I'm just going, fuck. I'm hitting 23 now. I'm only 23, but fuck me, I feel old. Fuck
hey,
me.
23. What a time to be having these conversations.
But yeah, going on with the story, I was walking to Fridays and I saw this homeless bloke on the street, and he came up. He just looked at me and he said, "Oh, do you have any change?" And to my response, I said to him, "Mate, I can't give you any change because I'm feeding into your addiction. Can I give you money? Can I buy you food?" He's like, "I don't want any food." And I just went, "You know what? Fuck it. I've got time. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to have a chat to this guy." And I spoke to this bloke for about 30 to 45 minutes, and he just told me, he's like, "Man, I'm a heroin addict, and I'm trying to get, I'm trying to see my child again. I'm trying to see my son again, and I'm trying to get off this addiction that I can't remove." And I said, "Man, we all go through shit. Like, you're in the darkest of your times right now. Don't give up, and just talk about it. There's no reason why you can't get through it. You're in your 50s. I'm in my 20s. Someone 15 could be going through something, and they really find it very difficult to go through." And I said, "Mate, you can, I'm telling you right now, you can get through this." I told him some of the things I've been through, and he's like, "Bro, this is the first time in a year that someone's actually spoken to me, apart from saying no or the occasional yes, because they're willing to give out some money." And then at the end, I'm like, "Bro, do you want some money?" He said, "Yes." And I actually went out and got him food. And it's like you can make a difference by doing that and going on with what you said. Even though he's on the fucking street, we judge him because he's on the street. Whereas, realistically, and I'm sure you'd be the same at times, man, everyone's addicted to the phone. But we don't see the phone as a bad addiction. As soon as the notification goes off, I'll be going to bed, and I fucking forget to turn my notifications sound off. And I'm like dozing off, and I'm going into a full trance. And then as soon as the notification goes off, I'm like, fuck, I've got to see it.
Yeah.
That in itself is an addiction as well. So I just, try to give a bit of positive reinforcement for his situation, and hopefully from that it might give him that kickstart that he needed.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really cool story, and lending an ear is so powerful, right? Regardless of where the person is. I remember reading, and I'll paraphrase it, but I remember reading a meme or something, and it's like, if wealthy people are partying with cocaine and drugs, it's a really good night. But then if bogans are using drugs, then they're all drop kicks and stuff like that. And it's like the actions are still the same, but it's just how you perceive people or how people perceive it.
100%. 100%. It's like oh, you're classy. Like if you're in a tuxedo and wearing a tie and doing coke, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But someone who lives in is living off the dole and doing it's like, oh, why would you fucking spend your money on that when realistically you're struggling to buy your basic essentials?
Yep.
It's the same thing.
Exactly. Still a fucking bad, filthy fucking habit. But talk to us about the podcast. So Couch in the Mind. 23, you had a pretty cool, when I say pretty cool, I mean life-changing experience that made you think about mortality and what you actually want from life. Because I think even if people ask themselves that question, it can be overwhelming for people to try and even answer. But I love, connecting with people like yourself who are actually working towards creating the life that they want. But what led you to create that podcast?
So it was probably at a time, it was when I was hitting that rough patch, and I actually reached out to a mate of mine, Michael Codd, and I always had this idea of just openly talking about my feelings and emotions, and at that time I was actually starting to get a bit more comfortable to do that. And I remember it was at the end of a touch rugby league game. I was just driving him home. I said, "Man, would you ever consider doing a podcast with me?" And he's like, fuck, I don't mind podcasts. I've never thought about it, but I know I've been through stuff before, and maybe it could be an educational thing for people to listen in. And we continued talking and talking about it, and then we just went, fuck it, let's just do it. And we just started off by talking about some of the things we've experienced, and we posted it, got a decent response, and fuck me, when I shared my story, I felt like vomiting, just because of how someone could react by what I'm talking about. You don't know. Yep. It's because I still cared about what people thought about me.
Yep.
And then over time, I didn't really care. And I was like, oh, this is actually good. I'm actually benefiting it from myself.
Yep.
And over time, I'm getting different guests on the show with different perspectives. Could be a very similar situation, but different perspectives. And I guess all I really want to do, man, money's a driving factor for everything, but that's not for me. Like, all I want to do, even if I'm getting like 1 or 2 views from a video, as long as I'm having somewhat of a positive impact on someone who's going through something, some sort of negative experience. Yep. Again, I'm not telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing because I'm not qualified, but I'm just sharing some experiences and stories I've been through. That's all I care about, man.
That's awesome. Where do you see yourself going with it, though?
Yeah, so I would love to. I'm thinking of maybe going and doing like psychology or social work next year at uni.
Yep.
Just want to like give back to the community somehow, and trying to in my, I guess, in the podcast itself, I always sort of be putting together an idea where I might get like 6 or 7 guests that I've had on the show, and we do like a live seminar where people come in, pay $5-10, and it goes toward a certain charity, and I'll sit on the couch and just chat to them, and like they do a bit of a recap on their story, just to gain that exposure, knowing that some people think that they go through shit by themselves, but hearing other people, oh fuck, their situation sounds very similar to mine, and with regards to that, I actually hit that point, and I thought about this 2 or 3 months ago when I was back at school when I was on retreat, which meant we'd have a reflection day where we'd talk about the year that was, or talk about some things that we may be experiencing, personal life, all that sort of stuff. And I remember we're sitting in this big hall, and we had to write anonymous letters about things that we're experiencing at home or within ourselves or whatever it may be. And I remember this guy walked up on the stage, and he was sharing an experience that he was going through, and I could relate to that. And prior to that, I was going, nah, that wasn't bad, that was fine. People much more worse off than me. And I think I was in year 10, and I was sitting there, and I just absolutely started bawling my eyes out. I was in the corner of the room, chucked the hat over the eyes because I was too afraid that people would see me crying.
Yep.
And I just couldn't stop crying. And it was just because I realised that, fuck, they're actually, like, what I was experiencing is shit. Like, people experience stuff all the time, whether it be bad, worse than what I'm going through, whether it be not as bad.
Yep.
But it hit a point where I'm like, fuck, like, it was a changing experience for me.
I find it like, when I see blokes being vulnerable and like tearing up or crying and stuff, like, I think it's like the most beautiful, well, now, like, I see it's the most beautiful experience because they're actually just being in the moment and they're experiencing something. Last night we were at a charity dinner, and Mark Matthews was speaking, a big wave surfer, and he was talking about when he had that big injury on his leg and his career looked all but over, and this young fella messaged him on social media and was like, fuck, like, I'm a big fan, I'd love to come see you, I'm in the hospital as well. And obviously he was going through depression at that point because he thought his career was over. I was like, no. And then eventually the kid kept asking, I was like, righto, come on up to the room. Next minute this kid gets wheeled in by his brother in a wheelchair. He'd become a quadriplegic in a snowboarding accident a couple of weeks prior. But he had the most optimistic outlook ever. And Mark's telling this story, and all these blokes are in this room, and then he's like, that was the moment that I realised, someone's always got it worse, and I just need to decide how I'm going to respond to this. And he's like, so I wanted to do something amazing for this boy. This was, 8 months later or whatever, but he took him surfing. This kid's a quadriplegic, but there's footage, and he showed the footage last night. And like, to see some of the guys that I was with crying, and you're just sitting there, you're like, this is fucking incredible, because we're in a place where blokes can actually show how they actually are feeling. Like, it was a beautiful moment. And it's like, it also gives you permission to be like, oh, that's how I'm feeling too. I can have a cry as well. It's just because that's what life is really about. Like, as much as we need money to live, it's cool to have drive and ambition. Like, at the end of the day, it comes down to human connection and how others make you feel and how you allow yourself to feel. So I think it's
Yeah, you go, man.
No, you're good.
Well, that's exactly right. Like, we all set our own personal goals, whether it be trying to climb the corporate ladder or starting up your own business, much like what you've been able to achieve. But it's those smaller things that we all should be able to talk about. I mean, smaller things become bigger things if we don't actually talk about it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely, 100%. What, like, for you next, where do you see it going? Like, obviously online events or even workshops, but like, let's think big picture. If you could do what you love, which is what you're working towards doing, what would it look like for you?
Mate, honestly, I would love to do, like, you know, the whole TED Talk thing. I would love to get on TED Talks and just talk about this sort of stuff.
Yep.
You know, like, I won't get to a point where I'm so confident in myself and my speaking ability that I can do that sort of stuff and do it regularly. So I just, it's a hard question because all I really want to do is just have somewhat of an impact.
Yep.
And continue that process. And for me to be able to do that, I'm saying yes to a lot more things, whereas in the past I would usually say no.
But you got to have that big. You have to have that goal. And how does it make you feel when you say that out loud?
Mate, when I say it out loud, it's an amazing thing because I never thought that I was able to do this. Because like going through school, I was never good with my speaking ability. Like when I was like doing oral presentations, I'd be like holding like my A3 size paper like this and just mumbling.
Yep.
And I don't even know how the fuck I managed to get like a C or whatever it was because somehow the teachers heard me. But like over time, I've just learned that like if you want something bad enough, no matter what other people think, you'll be able to achieve it. It's nothing is unachievable if you want to if you set yourself to something.
Yeah, work towards it. Got one last question for you. What's your definition of being a man?
I remember I asked you this, so we're just flipping the ties now. My definition of man, honestly, I just think like to be a true man, you've got to be number one in touch with your emotions. I don't give a fuck like if you're playing rugby and the coach says that you're weak doing that, you know, I don't care. Like the moment you think that there's something not right within yourself, whether it be mentally, whether it be like mistrust in a relationship, you've got to be in touch with your emotions. And I just think that, and another thing is just showing like respect, man. Because I think like I've spoken to a lot of people, and the respect is like, you know, it falls under common sense. And common sense is just not a thing of today.
Yeah.
It's just like, like, like I just think number one thing, just respect yourself, respect the situation you may be going through, and respect a woman, man. Like, gotta show respect to a woman, and people don't do enough of that. So I think to define what a man is for me is being in touch with your emotions and just showing respect to yourself, your surroundings, and the situation you're in, and to a woman or to a bloke if you're gay. Yep. So that's number one thing.
Yep. Love it. And where can people find you? This time's flown, but where can people find you on the socials or the podcast, all that sort of stuff?
Yep. So I've actually just put together a website. So if you search up, yeah. So I use a bit of Squarespace. So it's up and running. So if you want to hit me up on www.catchingthemind.com, you can also find me Catching the Mind Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a few other podcast platforms, and Facebook as well. But yeah, that's about it.
Epic, mate. Well, once again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, but also some insights into some cool stuff. And guys, if you want to chat more with Jay, just go listen to his podcast. How many episodes are you up to now?
Mate, I think I'm about 54, 55 episodes. So I've interviewed over 50 guests.
man. That's awesome. Well done. People don't.
Thanks, man.
Some people don't realize how much effort goes into podcasting, but it's like organizing the times, taking notes, doing all the editing and everything like that. Like, there's a lot of time and energy that goes to putting in, especially 54 episodes. That's fucking unreal, brother.
That's it, man. But I always look at the long-term goal. What can someone get out of this? What's the reward factor? And that's my driving force.
Yeah, 100%. And for those who are watching on YouTube or whatever platform you're listening to, make sure you like, and if you love the episode, share it and leave a review. We appreciate you guys' time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in.